In this video, I'm bringing across over 26 points where the church and Jesus are at polar opposites. Now, the purpose of this video isn't to slam religion or to make people change their mind about that the church is right or wrong or anything like that. Each person should make their own choice about that. But this is for people who have already felt that they have no use for church. They're being pressured to go to church and they don't want to go. They know in their spirit that they don't want to go, but they haven't been able to put a finger on exactly why that is. And so this video is to be viewed from the perspective that this is for people who are on a journey looking for answers to how they feel about church, why they've stopped going to church, why they haven't felt good about going to church, and why they just don't feel the connection there. And when you can see these different points, then it starts to become clear that subconsciously we're recognizing the misalignment between Jesus and the church. And when we start to put this out in the open, like a conscious awareness of these differences, now we can start to make a choice based on whether we believe this or whether we believe what the church has to say. So let's go through these 26 points, and then from there, it's up to you to either explore that further or to go back to your own ways of thinking about it. But it should be fairly apparent to anybody that claims to read the Bible that there's significant differences that would be able to be picked out from anybody that actually knows the Bible. So let's start the review of this. 26 differences between the church and Jesus. And it starts with Jesus teaches that God is in and around us. The church teaches that God is separate from us and at odds with us. Jesus teaches that we can do whatever he did and more, but the church teaches that we're weak, unworthy. Jesus teaches that Satan is our ego, and yet the church teaches that Satan is some unknown entity hiding around the corner, waiting to attack us. Jesus teaches us to pray in private, as he did, but yet the church teaches to pray for people to pray in public, even though Jesus opposed that. Jesus teaches that prayer is all of our thoughts, and yet the church teaches that prayer is very specific wording to God or Jesus, separate from what our thoughts are. Jesus teaches us not to pray to idols, and yet the church has turned Jesus into an idol to be prayed to. Jesus teaches us that the blood that flows through us is a reminder of the Spirit that flows through us. The church teaches us that the wine turns into Jesus' blood, that we should drink that. Jesus teaches that eating can be a reminder of the lessons that he provided for us, and yet the church turned that into eating his body. Jesus teaches us to watch for the wolf in sheep's clothing, yet the church is the wolf in sheep's clothing, especially when you consider these points, right? Jesus teaches that sin is all forms of unease, so everything like anxiety and that. The church teaches that sin is a human fault that separates us from God, that we're born with it. Jesus teaches us that bathing can be a reminder how easy it is to wash away our sin, to move away from unease into peace. The church teaches that baptism is a ritual to wash away sin, but all the while we're still sinners and we remain sinners. So a real conflict in thought there. Jesus teaches that we can have anything we want, and the church teaches that we should live in poverty. Jesus teaches that we are not to interfere in the choices that any group of other people make, and yet the church makes the decision that the only allowable relationship is between a man and woman. Everything else is wrong, even though Jesus teaches that we're not supposed to interfere in that. Of course, keeping in mind that keeping children safe. Jesus teaches that we should trust God. The church trusts their own military army that they have. So where's the trust in God? Jesus teaches that Peter was Jesus teaches that Peter was speaking from his ego, and the church teaches that Peter was the first pope. So we'd have to believe that the first pope was actually Satan. Jesus teaches us to be guided by our spirit, and yet the church teaches that only some people get the Holy Spirit. We're actually born with spirit. Jesus exhibited how to serve other people, but the church directs people how they should serve the church, how to worship the Pope. Jesus teaches that faith is the complete absence of doubt. The church teaches that faith is a belief in a God out there somewhere, a vague concept. Jesus teaches that we create our own reality. The church teaches that God distributes whatever he feels like to whoever he feels is worthy. Jesus teaches us not to worry about tomorrow. The church teaches us about the ultimate tomorrow. They're always talking about life after death. Jesus teaches us to protect children. And what does the church do? Well, they don't have a very good history with that. Jesus teaches the Our Father as a way of reminding us of all the lessons he taught, and yet the church has turned the Our Father into a ritualistic prayer. Jesus taught his disciples in under a year to do what he did, and yet not even the Pope can do what Jesus did. Jesus taught practical lessons for people to use in their daily lives. The church teaches rituals of idolatry and church worship. Jesus teaches us to follow his examples. The church teaches people to follow Jesus as an idol. Jesus teaches that our cross to bear is our choice between unease and peace. And the church teaches that our cross to bear is that we're born sinners. Jesus teaches that salvation is a man-made concept. He only mentions it once in the Bible. The church teaches that the goal of following Jesus is salvation. So you can see just from a whole series of points that where Jesus and the church are at polar opposites, and anybody that actually reads the Bible understands these things could see it doesn't take any kind of multi-language translation to figure this out. The words of Jesus survive to today in the Bible. You just have to read it, and when you can understand it without all the misinterpretation of the church, then it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly. That's when I did this Bible study. And there's another topic, Bible study. What does that mean for most people? It means that you read the Bible and you come to the conclusion that the church has already decided is the conclusion you have to come to. So how is that a study? Isn't that a Bible memorization? So again, this isn't to knock religion. This is only from a perspective of it. I've read the Bible. I understand this. I question, like, what was the church actually talking about? Well, the church talks about, well, you know, it's difficult even for their scholars to understand. Shouldn't that be kind of like a warning sign? Shouldn't that be kind of like, okay, well, if you can't read and understand the basics of what Jesus taught, Jesus didn't send translators around when he was out, when people followed him. He spoke, they listened to him, they found value in what he was saying, and they took the lessons and they went on to create great lives. History proves that when you look at the history of Syria around the time, from the time of Jesus to 350 years later, Syria lived in peace and prosperity for the biggest part. And even when the country was taken over, an interesting comment there is that the conquering armies allowed them to keep their religion. Now, how do you take away something as strong as what Jesus taught people without killing somebody? There was no choice but to let people keep their religion. For those who are feeling uncomfortable with going to church, you're feeling that way because there's so much disconnection between Jesus and the church. They're completely opposite messages. In the book that I've written on this, I've expanded on all these points. What I'm going to continue to do is create more videos and just start to break these individual points down into individual lessons. So we can, instead of rhyming off a whole bunch of points and then going through and saying, okay, now you're supposed to remember all this stuff and make sense of it, I'm going to start to take key points and I'll start doing short videos about them so that you can just go through and whichever one you find interesting, view it, consider it, see what your spirit tells you about that message, and then we'll go to the next videos. The whole point of all this is that at the core of this is that Jesus taught a very powerful message, and that is that our minds have all the power to create our physical reality. The same way that he used his mind to create his physical reality of where he saved and helped so many people and healed people. He knew that what his capability of thinking, his capability of thought created his reality. So the way I like to refer to that is his spiritual reality, our spiritual reality of thought, thinking, all the stuff that you can't put on an operating table so the thoughts and thinking is what creates our physical reality. What we think is what becomes our reality. And so that's been said in many different ways, whether you consider it as law of attraction or the way Jesus spoke about it, but it's always the same. Everything starts with thought. If you think about even our illnesses, our well-being, when we think something negative and now we cause the chemicals in our body and our brains to start to alter our physical state, we can see that thought is the beginning to everything. And this is what Jesus is teaching, is that with a certain way of thinking, we create a certain outcome. And so through these series of videos, breaking down each one of these things, so we'll look at what Jesus taught, look at what the church taught, and then see what did Jesus actually mean with all these things that he was teaching. And from that, you take away practical lessons that you can try out on your own. You don't have to believe what I say, just take the lesson, try it out, and see what your spirit tells you. See what your results are when you apply your mind to what Jesus was teaching. And what you'll find from there is that the discomfort you felt with going to church is very well founded. Now you have a concrete understanding of why you had that discomfort in going. And from there, now you can start to go on a path where you're actually following what Jesus taught rather than praying to an idol of Jesus or that whole worship nonsense about the very things that Jesus talked about to avoid, like idol worship. It's all that the church has turned into. It's all maybe all that it ever was. So I'm looking forward to hearing your comments. There's lots of ways to contact me. Send me a message, send me a note, tell me what you think. There's our weekend conversations where we use the basis of the 24 life ingredients, which was something I formulated based on all the things I've studied, from all the books I've written, from all the understanding of life so far. From the 24 life ingredients, it gives you practical ways to start using the power of your mind, not in some kind of a mystical, magical way, but just when I think like this, I create that outcome. And you'll see very quickly how we're doing that all day long. And if we're unhappy with the reality that we've got, then all we have to do is to start to think differently. Now, it sounds simple, and it can be, but we've got a very strong subconscious that stands in the way. All of this is covered. I created a mini-series of classes. There's probably over a dozen classes. All classes, all good content, no sales. Like, I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm not trying to tell you that you should buy our coaching or that you should become a life coach. We offer life coach training. We offer one-on-one coaching. But through all the free information I've put out there, all the classes, you'll have more than enough to work with without ever paying me a dime for anything. The importance of this is that there's lots of things that you can test with your own spirit, try it out, and it will improve your life. Just apply it and let yourself be guided by your spirit. So for the links to all the free content, just look for John Verwey 2020. There's probably 2 or 3 different YouTube channels that I've got going there, just not knowing what I'm doing with YouTube. But the one you're looking for is John Verwey 2020. That's got all the classes. So if you're looking for the free classes on the 24 life ingredients, you should be able to find a link to that. There's a lot of my older videos. They all carry value of some sort, but the latest ones are the 24 life ingredients. And I'm hoping that you'll find good value in that. If there's something specific you'd like to have covered, just send me a note and I'll do a video to address that particular topic. In the meantime, I'm hoping to see you on one of our weekend conversations. Look forward to hearing from you. And in the meantime, all the best.